Michelle Paet was an attractive mother of 4 living in the suburbs.
Michelle was absolutely stunning, beautiful young lady.
She was always everybody's center of attention.
She and her husband Nathan had been together nearly 12 years, traveling the country for his military career.
She loved him, with all her heart.
Everyone would say that they thought Michelle and Nathan had a perfect marriage.
But their perfect suburban life ended in a deadly ambush.
As soon as his garage door opened, these shots are fired.
An Air Force sergeant gunned down in front of his house. Made big news for Las Vegas.
The investigation would reveal that this seemingly average family was mixed up with some scary characters.
She happens to be a former porn star.
He is a multiple-time felon. He was a hardened criminal.
They were going to commit an armed robbery of a heroin dealer.
And that left the investigators wondering, had Michelle simply been caught in the middle?
She didn't know this was going to happen.
Or was she really behind it all?
This girl knew exactly what she was doing. She ended that text message with an LOL.
Like any night, the Las Vegas Strip was packed with tourists, partiers, and gamblers on the evening of December 1st, 2010. But for most of this sprawling metropolis of more than 1 million, it was a quiet Wednesday night, the same as in any American suburb.
When people hear about living in Las Vegas, just think, oh, you live in a high-rise hotel, casino? Well, that's not really the case. Las Vegas is no different than any city. We have neighborhoods, parks, schools.
And one of those neighborhoods was the peaceful planned community of Mountain's Edge at Sterling Ridge.
It was very far removed from the Las Vegas Strip,
which made what was about to happen even more frightening. At around 11:30 that night, a homeowner in this safe suburban community made a frantic call to Clark County 911.
She was nothing short of hysterical. She was hyperventilating.
The caller, 29-year-old Michelle Paet, told the 911 operator that a few minutes earlier, her husband had gone into the garage preparing to leave for a late-night duty shift at nearby Nellis Air Force Base.
She said she heard the garage door open, and she said all she heard was shots.
Terrified, Michelle hurried toward the garage, but just as she reached the door, it opened, and Michelle screamed in horror.
Her husband stumbled into the house, covered in blood.
He just collapses right by the stairs.
Her 911 call is absolutely chilling. You can hear her 4 children crying in the background.
The Las Vegas Metro Police were on the scene within minutes. Inside the house, they found 28-year-old Nathan Paet collapsed on the floor in a pool of blood.
He was shot multiple times.
He was bleeding to death.
An ambulance rushed the father of 4 to a local hospital.
He was still alive when they transported him.
But even as doctors rushed to save Nathan, the investigators were left with a mystery. Why had the father of 4 been shot in his own garage? Was he the victim of a random crime? Or would the investigation reveal that there were disturbing secrets lurking within what appeared to be an average all-American home? Born in 1981, Michelle Chaco's story began a world away from the Nevada desert in the middle of the vast Pacific.
Michelle was born on the island of Guam, which is a very small island.
It's a U.S. territory, so, we are U.S. citizens.
There is an American military base there. There are a lot of American service people, but otherwise they're all islanders.
It was a happy childhood growing up in a tropical paradise, surrounded by a large and supportive family.
She was always everybody's center of attention because she always had a big, bright smile.
Although when she was 15, tragedy struck. Michelle's mother became so seriously ill that she was flown to the mainland for treatment.
They had to take her over to California, and she never saw her again. Unfortunately, she died at a young age.
When we lost our mother, it was hard. I assumed the role to take care of my brother and my sisters, and Michelle was always like my right hand.
Although Michelle also managed to make time for a busy social life.
She was always like Miss Popularity.
And she was especially popular with the boys.
Michelle was absolutely stunning, beautiful young lady. If you think of an island girl, a beautiful island girl, she fits the profile.
And one of the first boys to notice the blossoming island beauty was a classmate named Nathan Paet. Nate to his friends, Nathan was just a few months younger than Michelle and also a Guam native.
Everybody loved Nate. He was dear to everybody. Just typical island guy.
Boogie boarding was his thing. So, like, let's say after he was done with work, he would want to go out to the beach, catch a couple waves.
Although after he met Michelle in high school, she immediately became his main interest.
He was absolutely floored by how beautiful she was, and he was just head over heels in love with her.
Michelle found plenty to like about Nate, too.
He was outgoing. He always wanted to do a lot of things. He was a great person.
Soon, the two teenagers started dating.
They were everyone's ideal couple.
And Nate hoped that would be true after graduation, too. He proposed, and Michelle said yes.
She loved him, with all her heart.
But the young couple would have to save up for a wedding. Nate got a job at a hotel on the island, and Michelle gave birth to their first child, a son.
They ended up moving in with his mother. And he was just working at the hotel, minimum wage, not enough money, and they're starting their family.
So in 2002, when he was 20, Nate joined the Air Force.
He wanted to better his career, provide for his family.
Although upon enlisting, the service took the young family far from their island home.
She kind of followed Nathan from Guam to Anchorage, Alaska, where they lived for about 4 years.
It was a transition. Everything was just new to them.
In 2006, after the birth of their second child, Michelle and Nate finally married. And after a short time in Tucson, Arizona, the Air Force promoted Nate in 2007 and assigned him to Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas.
He was a staff sergeant, and he was assigned to be a logistics officer for an F-15 squadron.
This guy was responsible for parts that small but costing millions of dollars, and he was very good at it.
Even as he excelled at his military career, family came first for both Nate and Michelle.
That's the way we were raised. Your kids first, then your spouse, and then take care of yourself.
And by 2009, they'd had 2 more, in addition to the son born in Guam and the daughter born in Alaska.
And they had 4 children in a very short amount of time.
Supporting a family of 6 on a military paycheck was tough, but Nate managed to save a little money.
At times, he would have to take a second job because he always wanted to provide for Michelle and his family as best as he could.
And in August of 2009, he'd saved up enough to surprise Michelle with a brand new home in Mountain's Edge.
He chose this house on his own and did everything. My sister had no idea.
And after years of living on military bases, she was thrilled with Nate's surprise.
It was a beautiful single-family residence, a 2-story home with approximately 2,400 square feet.
It was perfect for the young family, even if Nate wouldn't always be there to enjoy it. Soon after moving in, he volunteered for an overseas assignment.
He wanted to, make his enlistment be something, for his family and his kids to be proud of.
And in June of 2009, he shipped out for Iraq.
And my sister, at one point, she's like, what if something happens? She was crying.
And worrying about her husband's safety wasn't the only challenge 27-year-old Michelle faced while he was deployed.
Her children were all young, so she was tasked with raising the children and providing for them and keeping the home and everything.
However, just like her family's struggle after her mother's untimely death, Michelle managed, thanks to the extra combat pay Nate was sending home, plus the income from her new part-time job.
Michelle Paet was working at the time at EIN, which was a telemarketing company here in Las Vegas.
And within 6 months, Nate was home.
He came, I think, before Christmas, before his daughter's birthday.
Once reunited with his family, Nate settled back into life as a suburban dad, while Michelle kept her part-time job and started making plans for a new career.
Michelle was actually attending a beautician school while also working a job for a telemarketing service.
And by 2010, the couple had been together for 12 years and appeared to be as in love as ever.
Michelle and Nate had a good family and a good marriage, good communication.
They were happy together. They would always compliment each other anywhere. Oh, my wife is such a beautiful lady, and she's just so caring with my kids. And she would return the favor. Oh, I have the best husband in the world. They're a perfect match for each other.
But on the first day of December, less than a year after Nate came home from Iraq, the couple's happy life would come to a sudden and violent end. Coming up, the investigators struggled to make sense of the shooting.
Air Force members who lead normal lives don't just randomly get shot.
Everyone would say that they thought Michelle and Nathan had a perfect marriage.
But was there a dangerous secret in Michelle and Nathan's fairy tale marriage?
Police started asking if she had any affairs or any love interest.
At 11:30 on the night of December 1st, 2010, Michelle Paet called 911 and reported that her husband had just been shot in their suburban home outside Las Vegas, Nevada.
She said she heard the garage door open, and she said all she heard was shots.
Las Vegas Metro Police were on the scene within minutes, only to find Michelle clinging to her stricken husband.
Michelle is absolutely hysterical, crying, screaming, and apparently administering some sort of help to her husband.
EMTs rushed 28-year-old Nathan Paet to the nearest hospital.
He was still alive when they transferred him, but he didn't make it.
Nathan was shot multiple times, and one of those gunshot wounds ended up severing his carotid artery. There was no way to save Nathan at that point.
But why would anyone want to murder the father of four, an active-duty airman at Nellis Air Force Base?
Air Force members who lead normal lives, who live in a normal neighborhood, raising a family, don't just randomly get shot.
At the scene, Michelle told the police it had been an ordinary night. At a little after 11 o'clock, she had been getting ready for bed while her husband got dressed.
His normal hours were set to start around 11:30 at night, and then he would work the graveyard hours all the way till about 7:30 in the morning.
Although according to Michelle, Nate had been running late that evening.
He kind of overslept, so he was rushing.
So far behind, in fact, that while getting dressed, he'd called a coworker to cover for him.
Everybody always had his, their back. They always looked out for each other. So that was his camaraderie at work.
And then, according to Michelle, Nate had hurried out to the garage.
Nathan Paet had a very distinct pattern that he would go through when he would leave at night. He would open the garage door, and then he would go and he would sit down on a workout bench and put his shoes on.
Michelle said that was when she'd heard the shots.
She said she heard like two, and then she runs down.
And when she got to the garage door,
she's shocked and surprised by her husband coming into the house and collapsing, covered in blood.
He had enough strength to make it into the house, but he collapsed at the entrance into the living room.
The evidence at the scene appeared to confirm Michelle's account of the tragedy.
He left a pool of blood right underneath that workout bench.
But that still didn't solve the biggest mystery surrounding Nate's death. Why?
It's not normal for a decent, honest, law-abiding citizen to just get gunned down in his garage as he's going to work. It just doesn't happen.
And it especially didn't happen in suburban Mountain's Edge, miles from Sin City's infamous Strip.
It wasn't an area where you would have a high amount of traffic, where there would be transients, where this would be maybe a random attack or a random robbery gone wrong.
Which led the investigators to conclude that the killer had targeted Nate specifically.
He was clearly ambushed. As soon as his garage door opened, these shots are fired.
However, the fact that the Paet's garage door had apparently been open did raise the possibility that one of the family's neighbors had witnessed the shooting. So, hoping for a lucky break, the investigators fanned out and started knocking on doors.
No one had seen what actually occurred inside the garage of the Paet home.
Two neighbors had seen something else, though. They told the police that when the murder occurred, They had been out searching the cul-de-sacs for their lost dog.
These two neighbors, as they were looking for the dog, suddenly hear gunshots. And then they saw a figure racing to a black Cadillac CTS that had been parked.
Was it the shooter? The neighbors couldn't say for sure. But whoever it was, he certainly acted suspiciously once behind the wheel of the car.
The lights suddenly came on and the engine revved up really fast, and then the lights were turned off. And this Cadillac CTS raced out of the neighborhood at an extreme high rate of speed.
As soon as the investigators learned of the suspicious vehicle, they relayed that information to Michelle.
Well, the police then asked Michelle, do you know anybody who drives a black car, a black sedan? And she says, oh, yes, my friend Michael Rodriguez.
But why would one of Michelle's friends be leaving the scene of her husband's murder? Was it a coincidence? Or was it possible that Michelle and Michael were more than friends?
So the police started asking if she had any affairs or any love interests.
She said she wasn't having an affair with anyone.
But then a horrifying thought occurred to Michelle.
She then gives the detectives a little bit more and says, I did flirt with some people at the office.
Michelle worked part-time at a local telemarketing firm.
And then she tells them Michael is one of the people that she flirts with.
Michael Rodriguez was a smooth-talking individual who had the gift of a silver tongue.
And the customers weren't the only people he charmed.
He was the guy at EIN that all the ladies liked. He was known as a player.
And Michelle admitted that the smooth-talking salesman had made a play for her, too.
Michael would say, like, Michelle, your hair looks great today. Michelle, did you get a haircut? Michelle, I'm going to get coffee. Would you like some coffee? Can I get you breakfast? Have you eaten today? Would you like some lunch? He paid attention to her.
According to Michelle, she'd played along up to a point, letting Michael take her to lunch or buy her coffee to boost her spirits while Nate was deployed to Iraq.
She has a guy who's flirting with her that was fun for her.
But she said she'd forgotten all about it once her husband came home.
Everyone would say that they thought Michelle and Nathan had a perfect marriage.
But what about Michael? Was it possible he'd read more into Michelle's flirting than she intended? And perhaps he didn't find it as easy to let go.
The police were immediately interested in wanting to talk to Michael Rodriguez.
And once they ran Michael's name through their databases, they wanted to talk to him even more.
He's a two-strike felon.
He's been in trouble with the law since teenage years.
He'd done time in prison as an adult, too.
He wasn't a Boy Scout, and his criminal history reflected the same.
And by the morning after the murder, the investigators had identified Michael as a person of interest and started watching his house.
They spotted Michael Rodriguez driving a black Cadillac CTS from his home to work.
The investigators pulled Michael over, and while they brought him in for questioning, they examined his car, too.
The police took it to the crime lab in order to be processed.
Once back at the station, the investigators asked Michael to account for his whereabouts on December 1st, and the fast-talking salesman had a ready alibi. He told the homicide detectives that he'd gone shopping after work that evening and bumped into a woman he just happened to recognize.
She happens to be a former porn star.
And with "Don't I Know You From Somewhere" as a way in, the smooth talker said he'd begun chatting up the attractive blonde.
Anybody that knew him to be charming.
He knew how to manipulate people.
And that night, according to Michael, he'd manipulated the former adult actress into an impromptu date.
They ended up driving over to the airport. They watched the planes land for a while, drinking some alcoholic beverages.
Then, after the airport, Michael said that they had adjourned to a nearby hotel.
He told the police that he took that porn star to the Sunset Station at 10:30 at night, checked into the room, and proceeded to have sex with this porn star that he had just met a couple of hours earlier.
It was an incredible story, even for Las Vegas. But Michael said he had proof on his phone.
He made a video of himself having sexual encounter with this young lady, and he showed that to the detectives.
Michael also had the woman's phone number, which he shared with the investigators.
They proceeded to call her. She confirmed that he was with her on that particular night and nowhere around Nathan Paet's home on December the 1st at around 11:30.
The investigators' most promising lead had suddenly evaporated. But did that mean their search for the Air Force sergeant's killer had gone bust? Coming up, someone makes a drastic change to their story.
She's in over her head.
And the investigators hit the jackpot.
She just starts spilling the beans.
By December 7th, it had been almost a week since Michelle Paet's husband, Nathan, was ambushed and murdered in the couple's suburban Las Vegas home.
Nathan was rushing to get ready for work. Say bye to the kids, bye to my sister, opens his garage, and then he gets shot.
Within hours of the shooting, the Las Vegas Metro Police thought they had identified a suspect, an ex-con and co-worker of Michelle's named Michael Rodriguez.
Michael drives a black Cadillac. There were a number of neighbors in that area who did see a black Cadillac speed out of the neighborhood.
However, a search of Michael's car hadn't produced any evidence, and Michael also had an alibi.
He told the police that he checked into the room and proceeded to have sex with this porn star that he had just met a couple hours earlier.
And to the detective's surprise, it turned out to be true.
She was contacted by law enforcement. She was with Michael during all of those hours and all of the important hours on December 1st of 2010.
As a result, the investigation was at a dead end, even as it continued to dominate the local headlines.
An Air Force sergeant getting killed, gunned down in front of his house as he's getting ready to go to work is made big news for Las Vegas.
And it was about to get even bigger. On the morning of December 7th, after Nate's murder had received days of news coverage, the woman at the center of Michael's alibi unexpectedly got back in touch with the investigators.
She definitely heard the news, and so she started putting two and two together.
And what she told the investigators was guaranteed to make headlines, too. The actress said she knew Michael through her friend Jessica Austin, who happened to date a friend of Michael's named Corey Hawkins.
Michael Rodriguez met Corey Hawkins while both were serving prison sentences.
And according to the actress, Jessica had called her a few days before Nathan's murder to ask a favor.
Jessica reached out to ask her if she would be an alibi for Michael Rodriguez.
Because Michael Rodriguez and Corey Hawkins were going to commit an armed robbery of a heroin dealer.
And since the actress thought the supposed victim was a heroin dealer, she hadn't hesitated.
And she agreed that she would be the alibi for this drug deal gone wrong.
Her share of the proceeds for helping out would be $5,000.
So according to what the woman told the investigators, rather than spend the evening at the airport with Michael watching planes land, they'd actually gone over to Jessica and Corey's apartment on the evening of December 1st.
She was at Corey and Jessica's apartment on December 1st in the Green Valley area here in Las Vegas.
The actress said that once they arrived, Michael and Corey left to allegedly rob the drug dealer, while she and Jessica sat around the apartment, waiting.
She then proceeds to tell the police that at some point around 11:30 or so, Jessica Austin got a call from Corey.
And based on what Jessica did next, he had called with a very specific request.
Jessica immediately started a fire in the house, in their fireplace.
And a few minutes later, Michael and Corey had rushed in after completing their so-called robbery.
They immediately stripped off their clothes, that they put those clothes in the fire.
Then, once Michael had gotten dressed, his alibi said they had climbed into his car and rushed to the hotel, with Michael talking the entire drive.
She described Michael Rodriguez pounding in her head the alibi that they had just met at Walmart, that they hit it off, and that they had sex.
Michael's made-up story was what the actress had originally told the police. But she now knew that Michael and Corey's claim about robbing a drug dealer was a lie.
She had no clue what, obviously, Michael, Corey and Jessica were planning to do to Nathan Paet. And she starts to realize that she's in over her head.
She gives a full statement and explains exactly what had happened.
Michael Rodriguez no longer had an alibi, and the investigators were confident that they had their killer.
He is a multiple-time felon. He was a hardened criminal.
But what could Michael Rodriguez have hoped to gain from killing Nathan Paet? Hoping for some information, the investigators asked Michelle to come in for another interview. And on December 7th, just hours before Nathan's memorial service at Nellis Air Force Base, his cousin drove Michelle down to the station for the interview.
On the drive, she's reminiscing about her relationship, her love for Nathan, the good times that she's had.
But then, leaving Nate's cousin waiting in the parking lot, Michelle went inside the station and told the investigators a rather different story. According to Michelle, her marriage to Nate was nowhere near as perfect as everyone assumed.
He never cheated on Michelle. He didn't abuse her. But he also didn't pay attention to her. He didn't say, Michelle, you look great today.
The things that she complained about were the everyday stressors of any married woman with 4 small children. Money, lack of affection.
And Michelle told the police that, feeling neglected, she had turned to Michael.
She tells detectives that, yes, she was involved with Michael Rodriguez and that the two of them had struck up a sexual relationship.
She just starts spilling the beans.
Although Michelle said calling what happened with Michael an affair was a stretch.
There wasn't a fantastical romance between Michelle Paet and Michael Rodriguez. It wasn't that at all. It was like a short tryst in the backseat of Michael's car, and that's it.
And according to Michelle, she had no idea he was an ex-con.
Michelle, of course, didn't know anything about his criminal history. She just knew that he was a guy who was paying attention to her, and she liked the attention.
I think that on the surface, a woman could see maybe how somebody like Michelle Paet could be initially drawn to Michael Rodriguez. I mean, it's age-old. Women are attracted to the bad boy, and Michael Rodriguez was certainly that.
However, in hindsight, she did admit that Michael had taken a curious interest in her husband's military benefits.
The conversations went something like this. Hey, Michelle, your husband's in the military. If something happens to him, you make a lot of money from that, don't you?
Somewhere in the midst of talking about Nate's military benefits and the fact that she was unhappy in her marriage, Michelle said their conversations had taken a dark turn.
She tells them that the two of them had been talking about numerous different ways to kill her husband.
It was idle chatter, according to Michelle. At least, that's what she thought it was.
She didn't put thought into this fantasy can actually, not even a fantasy, I would hesitate to call it a fantasy.
Fantasy or not, Michelle claimed that she had never intended it to come true.
Michelle puts all of the blame on Michael Rodriguez.
In fact, Michelle said she didn't even know the other players in the murder plot.
Michelle had never met Corey Hawkins or Jessica Austin.
But did that mean that Michelle was innocent? That she really didn't deserve any blame for her husband's murder?
She didn't know if it would actually take place, and if it was going to take place, she really did not know how to stop it. And that was really how simple Michelle was.
And for the moment, that appeared to satisfy the investigators.
The police told her, okay, thank you, you're free to leave.
Michelle hesitated.
She did not want to face the family because of this horrible thing that she had done.
Eventually, however, she did walk out of the station and into the parking lot where Nate's cousin was still waiting.
He was going to take her to the funeral services that was scheduled for that afternoon.
At least, that was the plan. But things didn't work out that way.
When she got outside, she had a complete and total meltdown.
Screaming, crying, and making threats to herself.
And she was making statements that she was suicidal.
At that point, the police intervened.
She was taken to a psychiatrical hospital for evaluation.
And later that day, while the therapists were evaluating Michelle, the investigators placed Michael Rodriguez, Corey Hawkins, and Jessica Austin under arrest for her husband's murder.
I get a call that they have 3 people in custody. And then, but there's one more possible suspect.
And 2 days later, when Michelle was released from the hospital, the family learned just who the suspect was.
We find out it's my sister.
Once she was released, she was arrested and she was brought to the Clark County Detention Center.
Michelle's family was blindsided by her arrest.
I know that she didn't know this was gonna happen. She loved her husband, and she still loves her husband.
But was that the case? Was Michelle simply a lonely housewife who sought a little excitement with the wrong man? Or was she the seductive manipulator behind her husband's murder? Coming up, the stakes are high when the case goes to court.
The state was seeking the death penalty.
And chilling new evidence casts doubt on Michelle's claims of innocence.
And then she ended that text message with an LOL.
By September of 2015, it had been almost 5 years since Michelle Paet's husband had been murdered in the couple's suburban Las Vegas home.
At first, I thought it was robbery because the houses there are new. Everybody has nice cars. I didn't think anything else of it. Like, why would they hurt him?
But according to the Las Vegas Metro Police and the Clark County DA's office, the murder was actually the result of a conspiracy.
We have 4 individuals. They all are pointing the finger at each other and giving statements implicating each other.
There was the alleged shooter, a 36-year-old ex-con named Michael Rodriguez.
Michael Rodriguez is a hardened criminal. If you needed somebody to help you orchestrate a murder, Michael Rodriguez is your guy.
Michael's fellow ex-con and alleged accomplice, Corey Hawkins, was also charged with the murder.
Corey Hawkins is, of course, the muscle.
It's the state's belief that he hooked up with Michael to get a cut from the money that Michael was going to get.
Corey's girlfriend, Jessica Austin, faced conspiracy charges for destroying evidence and helping to arrange the alibi for Michael and her boyfriend.
Jessica went along with it because Jessica was the type of person that was easily manipulated.
And finally, there was Nathan's wife, Michelle Paet. The 33-year-old mother of 4 faced murder charges for her role in the conspiracy.
I always felt that Michelle Paet was the most culpable person in this case.
She was carrying on an affair with Michael Rodriguez.
Questioned by the police, she had also admitted to being dissatisfied with her marriage, as well as admitting she discussed killing Nathan with Michael, discussions she had tried to portray as mere fantasy.
She tries to distance herself, say that she actually didn't want this to happen. She tries to say that she tried to stop it from happening.
But the investigators hadn't believed her, and neither did the prosecutors.
She is the person who told Michael Rodriguez that she had close to $650,000 in life insurance policies for her husband.
He took the full hook, line, and sinker. Once he knew how much money Nathan Paet's life was worth, he was game.
This girl knew exactly what she was doing from the minute that she met Michael Rodriguez.
However, while the prosecutors were convinced that Michelle was the key player in the murder conspiracy, could they convince a jury?
Michelle had absolutely no criminal history. She had no criminal past.
The only thing that she has on her record was a ticket when she just had her driver's permit.
And she didn't exactly look like a criminal mastermind either.
She looks very small, very meek. She looks vulnerable.
So when it came to putting the conspirators on trial, the prosecutors opted to take the path of least resistance.
The judge correctly ruled that we should have 4 separate trials. And so the first trial to go was Michael Rodriguez.
And when Michael's trial got underway on September 21st, the ex-con didn't just face the prospect of going back to prison.
The state was seeking the death penalty on Michael Rodriguez.
Michael was the person who pulled the trigger and killed her husband.
Granted, the plot to kill Nathan and collect more than $500,000 in military death benefits did start with Michelle.
She was just basically motivated by money.
But the prosecution claimed that it was meeting Michael that had really set Michelle's plan in motion.
If you want one word to describe Michael Rodriguez is, quite frankly, he's a scoundrel.
This guy was going to be the perfect person to help her execute the plan of killing her husband.
And the prosecutors claimed that the attractive young woman had no trouble recruiting Michael.
Sex was the big hook.
They would leave the office together. She would perform oral sex on him in parking lots.
But according to the prosecutors, it was the money that sealed the deal.
But for Michelle Paet, Michael Rodriguez never knows about the financial windfall that would come from potentially killing Nathan.
And the prosecutors knew that because they'd heard it directly from Michael.
Michael Rodriguez, after he got arrested, confesses to his involvement.
And as part of his confession, Michael said that Michelle promised to pay him $150,000 for the murder.
He said he was motivated by the money that he was going to get.
And once Michael was on board, he and Michelle began talking about ways to get rid of her husband.
And this is something that had been planned for months between he and Michelle.
But it was on December 1st of 2010, after arranging an alibi and recruiting Corey Hawkins, that Michael and Michelle went through with their plans.
The original plan was to have her husband kidnapped.
They would then take him out to the desert, kill him, and then they would leave his body to rot.
And to back up Michael's statement, the prosecutors had additional evidence they said proved that Michelle and Michael had cooperated to lay a trap for her husband.
There were a number of text messages immediately before her husband was murdered.
This is just minutes before her husband leaves to go to work.
She then started text messaging with Michael to let him know that her husband was late, but that he would be leaving the house momentarily.
A message sent at 11:24 p.m., when, according to the prosecutors, Michael and Corey were already waiting outside the house, ready to ambush Nate.
She ended that text message with an LOL.
And moments later, when Nate had opened the garage door, Michael and Corey were waiting to abduct him at gunpoint.
He was told to sit down or hold his hands up. They thought that he would surrender.
But the plan had immediately gone awry.
Nathan ran back into the house where he wanted to protect his family.
Nate is not somebody that, gives up easy. He wasn't going to go down without a fight.
The moment he started racing back to the house, gunfire erupted.
And he died without knowing just how badly Michelle had betrayed him.
The person that he was going back into the house to try to protect was the one who set him up.
When it was their turn, Michael's defense didn't deny that he'd been there the night Michelle's husband was killed.
The defense for Michael was really focused more on fighting the death penalty.
And in order to do that, they tried to shift the blame.
He tries to put most of the blame on Corey, that Corey Hawkins is the person that uses the gun to actually kill Nathan.
But would it matter to the jury exactly whose finger was on the trigger?
Under the law, if both co-conspirators are principals of the crime, that they're both active, involved in seeing or pursuing a particular crime, regardless of who the shooter is, both are legally equally liable for that death.
On September 25th, the jury announced the verdict.
It did not take this jury very long to convict Michael Rodriguez.
But before the jury reconvened to decide Michael's sentence, it would be Michelle's turn in court.
When she was telling me, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight.
And the fight could cost Michelle her life.
Death was absolutely on the table for Michelle Paet.
Coming up, Michelle has her day in court.
The defense certainly tried to paint her as shocked and surprised.
But will the court really condemn the mother of four to death?
Give her the possibility to get out and reunite with her children at some point in her life.
On October 1st, 2015, 4 years and 10 months after her husband had been shot dead in their Las Vegas garage, 33-year-old Michelle Paet stood in a Clark County, Nevada court, accused of orchestrating his murder.
There was only one person who could have gotten the ball rolling.
The man charged with actually shooting her husband, 36-year-old Michael Rodriguez had been found guilty a week earlier.
He had been convicted of first-degree murder.
And while his sentence had yet to be decided, he faced the death penalty.
The death penalty was absolutely in play in this case.
Which may explain why, just days before her case was scheduled to go to trial, her attorney approached the prosecutors with an offer.
If we agreed to withdraw the death penalty, she was willing to plead guilty.
And on October 1st, a sobbing and emotional Michelle did just that.
I made a huge mistake and a really bad choice. And I'm so sorry.
Michelle pled guilty because she feels responsible for Nathan's death.
Michelle's sudden plea caught her family entirely by surprise.
I really thought she was going to fight. And then next thing you know, she's not going to fight.
According to her attorney, Michelle had no choice but to make a deal.
We knew Michelle Paet was going to be found guilty of first-degree murder.
Although at her sentencing in March of 2016, Michelle still tried to portray the murder as nothing more than a fantasy on her part.
The defense certainly tried to paint her as shocked and surprised when it did happen.
Would her fantasy scenario be enough to earn her a shot at parole?
Give her the possibility to get out and reunite with her children at some point in her life.
Or would the fact that she'd murdered her children's father sway the judge?
So ultimately, the judge gave Michelle life without the possibility of parole.
Michelle Paet living the rest of her life in custody is as much justice as you can get for a case like this.
Michelle's family disagrees.
I honestly believe that she's innocent.
She was talking to Michael Rodriguez. But that doesn't make her a killer.
And Michelle's attorney is convinced that Michelle's sentence was a miscarriage of justice.
I was shocked with the outcome. I think our prison systems are too full already to have Michelle in prison for the rest of her life.
Because no matter how satisfying it might be for Nate's family, putting Michelle in prison for life won't bring him back.
You can't put a value on human's life. What was Nathan Paet's life worth?
Though some would argue that Michelle knew precisely how much her husband's life was worth.
She wanted to be free. She wanted her kids and the $650,000.
The thought of losing Nathan, her decent, honest, hardworking husband, didn't really seem to matter.
The desert never forgets. For 35 years, the Arizona heat preserved a secret buried beneath layers of sand, silence, and time. A forgotten road, an abandoned vehicle, a name that slowly disappeared from newspaper headlines. But in the summer of 2025, a single DNA match reopened a case that many believe would never be solved. A cold case that haunted an entire community. A disappearance that began on a quiet August night in 1990. And a family that spent more than 3 decades waiting for one phone call. The call that finally came. The call that revealed the truth everyone feared. On August 17, 1990, 26-year-old Rachel Morgan left her apartment in Mesa, Arizona. She told her roommate she was meeting someone. She never said who. She never said where. She only grabbed her keys, her jacket, and a small notebook she carried everywhere. At 9:14 p.m., a neighbor saw her walking toward a dark sedan parked outside the building. That was the last confirmed sighting of Rachel alive. The next morning, her car was found nearly 40 miles away near an isolated desert road outside the Superstition Mountains. The driver's door was open. The keys were still inside. Her purse was on the passenger seat. Her identification, her wallet, her phone, everything remained, except Rachel. At first, investigators believed she had left voluntarily. A missing adult, a possible runaway, a personal decision. But something about the scene bothered Detective Michael Reeves. He had spent 12 years investigating crimes across Arizona. He knew when something felt wrong. The vehicle looked abandoned, but not naturally abandoned. The driver's seat was pushed back. Rachel was short. She always adjusted the seat forward. The radio was turned to a station she never listened to. And the passenger door had a small scratch near the handle. A scratch that looked recent. Reeves documented everything. But in 1990, technology was limited. There were no advanced databases, no modern DNA testing, no digital surveillance networks, no automatic connections between crimes. Investigators depended on interviews, physical evidence, and human memory. The first days became the most important, and they became the days that would later haunt everyone involved, because mistakes made during those first 48 hours would follow the case for decades. Rachel Morgan was not just another missing person. She was a daughter, a sister, a teacher who spent weekend volunteering at a local youth center. People described her as someone who remembered birthdays, someone who stopped to help strangers, someone who believed every person had a story worth hearing. Her disappearance shocked the neighborhood. Search groups formed immediately. Hundreds of volunteers walked through the desert. They searched abandoned buildings, dry riverbeds, remote roads, everywhere except one location, a narrow stretch of desert land 5 miles from where Rachel's car was discovered, a location that investigators considered impossible, too empty, too exposed, too unlikely. But years later, that decision would become one of the biggest questions surrounding the investigation. Why was that area never searched? The official answer was simple. There was no evidence pointing there. But unofficially, some investigators later admitted something felt strange. The scene was too clean, almost prepared, as if someone wanted them looking in the wrong direction. The first major lead came 3 weeks after Rachel disappeared. A gas station employee reported seeing Rachel on the night she vanished. The employee said Rachel appeared nervous. She was not alone. A man was standing near her vehicle. Tall, dark hair, wearing a denim jacket. The employee remembered one unusual detail. Rachel appeared to recognize him. She did not seem afraid at first. She seemed surprised. Investigators asked the obvious question. Who was the man? The employee could not provide a name. No license plate. No clear description. Only a memory that became one of the most frustrating parts of the investigation. Because everyone agreed on one thing. The man existed, but nobody knew who he was. Months passed. The case grew colder. Theories spread. Some believed Rachel disappeared by choice. Others believed she was the victim of a stranger. Some suspected someone close to her. But every theory collapsed under investigation. Rachel's friends were cleared. Her co-workers were cleared. Her family was cleared. The unknown man remained the only unexplained piece. Then came the first major setback. Evidence from Rachel's vehicle was contaminated. A fingerprint recovered from the door handle could not be used. A possible hair sample was stored incorrectly. A piece of fabric found inside the vehicle was never tested. The case slowly moved from active investigation to unsolved file, then eventually to a box in an evidence room, a box nobody opened for decades. By 2000, Rachel's disappearance had become part of local history. By 2010, younger investigators knew the case only as an old file number. By 2020, Rachel's family had almost accepted they might never know what happened. Her mother kept Rachel's bedroom exactly the same. The same books, the same photographs, the same small wooden box where Rachel stored childhood memories. Every year on August 17th, the family gathered, not to celebrate, not to mourn, but to remember, because they refused to let Rachel become just another forgotten name. Then everything changed. In 2025, the Arizona Cold Case Unit began reviewing old evidence using new forensic technology. Thousands of unsolved cases were being re-examined. Cases once considered impossible. Rachel Morgan's file was selected. Investigators reopened the evidence box. Inside were items untouched for decades. Old photographs, handwritten notes, the original police reports, and a small evidence bag containing a piece of fabric collected from Rachel's vehicle in 1990. For 35 years, nobody knew what it contained. But modern testing revealed something hidden inside. A DNA profile. Not Rachel's. Not any known person connected to her. A stranger. A person whose identity had remained buried since that summer night. The sample was entered into the national database. At first, nothing happened. Weeks passed. Then one morning, A match appeared, a name, a person investigators never expected, a person who had lived quietly for decades, a person who had never been considered a suspect. The DNA breakthrough stunned the entire community, because the person connected to Rachel Morgan's disappearance was not a stranger from the desert, not an unknown criminal passing through town. It was someone who had been there from the beginning, someone who knew Rachel, someone who had spent 35 years hiding the truth. And when detectives arrived at the suspect's home, they discovered something even more shocking. A collection of evidence that proved Rachel's disappearance was never a mystery. It was a secret protected by silence, a secret buried deeper than the desert itself. The name on the DNA report changed everything. For 35 years, investigators had chased shadows, unknown vehicles, unidentified witnesses, impossible théorie. But now, for the first time since Rachel Morgan vanished, they had something they never had before. A direct connection, a person, a history, a reason to believe the truth had survived all these years. The DNA match belonged to a man named Daniel Cross, a name that appeared nowhere in the original investigation. No interview records, no Whitney statements, no mention in Rachel's files. At first glance, Daniel Cross seemed impossible. He was not a criminal. He had no violent history. No arrests, no suspicious reputation. He lived a quiet life outside Phoenix. He worked as a mechanic. He paid his taxes. He attended local community events. Neighbors described him as polite, reserved, the kind of person nobody would ever suspect. And that was exactly what disturbed investigators. Because cold cases often hide behind one painful truth. The person responsible is not always the person everyone fears. Sometimes, it is the person everyone trusts. Detective Elena Vargas, the new lead investigator assigned to Rachel's case, spent weeks studying Daniel Cross's background. She did not rush. She did not make assumptions. She knew DNA could connect a person to evidence. But evidence still needed a story, a timeline, a reason. She needed to know one thing. Why was Daniel Cross's DNA inside Rachel Morgan's abandoned vehicle? The answer could change everything. Daniel Cross was born in Arizona in 1962. In 1990, he was 28 years old. He worked as a repair technician at a small automotive shop in Mesa, the same city where Rachel lived. That connection immediately raised questions. Rachel owned a car. Daniel repaired cars. Could they have met through work? Investigators searched old business records. The repair shop still existed. Different owner, different name, but old employee records remained. And there it was, a document dated July 1990. Daniel Cross had worked on Rachel Morgan's vehicle 1 month before she disappeared. A routine repair, a brake issue, a simple maintenance visit. At first, investigators thought they had found the connection, but then they discovered something strange. Daniel's name was never included in the original case file. Not once. The reason was simple. Rachel never told investigators about him. The repair shop had not been considered important. It was just another ordinary interaction in Rachel's life. But now, that ordinary interaction looked very different. Detectives interviewed former employees from the repair shop. Most remembered nothing. 35 years was a long time. Memories faded. Details disappeared. But one former employee remembered Rachel. His name was Thomas Reed. He was a shop manager in 1990. When investigators mentioned Daniel Cross, his expression changed. You found him? Detective Vargas noticed immediately. You know Daniel? Thomas looked uncomfortable. I knew something was wrong back then. What do you mean? Thomas explained that after Rachel's car was repaired, Daniel acted strangely. He asked questions. Too many questions. He wanted to know where Rachel lived, where she worked, whether she drove alone. At the time, Thomas thought Daniel was simply interested in her, maybe attracted to her, maybe trying to learn more about her. He never imagined something darker, because nothing happened. Not then. No threats, no implants, no obvious warning signs. Just a few uncomfortable conversations. The kind of details people remember only after tragedy happens. Detective Vargas asked the question that mattered. Why didn't you tell police? Thomas looked down. Because I didn't think it mattered. That sentence appeared again and again throughout Rachel's case. People saw pieces, small pieces, but nobody saw the entire picture. The investigation moved forward. Detectives searched Daniel Cross's old records. They found something unusual. In the months after Rachel disappeared, Daniel suddenly left Mesa. He moved nearly 200 miles away. He changed jobs. He changed his phone number. He disappeared from the community. When questioned years later, Daniel claimed he moved because of financial problems. But investigators discovered something else. The move happened only 12 days after Rachel vanished. That timing was impossible to ignore. The first interview with Daniel Cross took place in a small police station outside Phoenix. He arrived voluntarily. Calm, confident, almost prepared. Detective Vargas placed a photograph of Rachel on the table. Daniel looked at it, then looked away. Do you know why we're here? Daniel nodded. The DNA? No surprise. No confusion. That bothered Vargas. Most people confronted with a 35-year-old cold case connection react emotionally. Shock, anger, fear. Daniel reacted like he had been waiting. Vargas asked, "How did your DNA get inside Rachel Morgan's car?" Daniel answered, "I worked on her vehicle." That's all. That's all. The interview lasted 2 hours. Daniel denied knowing Rachel personally. He denied meeting her outside the repair shop. He denied any involvement in her disappearance. But before leaving, he said something unusual, something that investigators would later examine repeatedly. He looked directly at Detective Vargas and said, "You should ask what happened to the notebook." The room went silent, because the notebook was never mentioned publicly. Rachel's small personal notebook had been missing since 1990. Her family knew she carried one. Investigators knew she carried one, but the public did not. Daniel Cross should not have known. Vargas immediately asked, "What notebook?" Daniel stopped. For the first time during the interview, he looked nervous. A small reaction. "But enough. I don't know. You just mentioned it. I made a mistake." "What mistake?" Daniel stood up. "I should leave." The interview ended, but the damage was done, because one sentence had reopened a mystery inside the mystery. The notebook, Rachel's notebook, the missing piece investigators never recovered, the object that may have contained her final thoughts, her final clues, her final warning. The investigation returned to the original evidence reports, and detectives found something that had been overlooked for decades. A handwritten note from the first officer who searched Rachel's apartment. The note said, "Victim's notebook appears missing. Family believes she always carried it." But the official report never included that information. Another overlooked detail. Another piece of the story lost in time. Detective Vargas began asking a new question. If Daniel Cross knew about the notebook, who else knew? The answer came from an unexpected place. A box of photographs stored in Rachel's childhood home. Her mother had kept everything. Letters, cards, old memories, and inside an envelope marked only Rachel's last summer. Investigators found a photograph taken 2 weeks before she disappeared. Rachel standing outside a local community center, smiling, holding something in her hand, the notebook, but behind her, in the reflection of a glass window, a person was visible, watching her. The image was blurry. The face could not be identified, but investigators noticed one detail. The person was wearing a ring, a distinctive silver ring with a black stone, the same type of ring that Daniel Cross had been photographed wearing for decades. The DNA match had answered one question, but it had created another. Daniel Cross was connected to Rachel, but was he the person who took her away? Or was he just one part of a much larger secret? Because the deeper investigators looked, the more they realized Rachel Morgan's disappearance was not caused by one moment. It was caused by a chain of decisions, a series of hidden choices. And somewhere inside those choices was the truth Rachel tried to write down before she disappeared. The photograph remained on Detective Elena Vargas's desk for 3 days. She looked at it every morning, every night, every time she walked past the evidence board, because sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest secrets. A reflection, a shadow, a shape in the background that everyone ignored. For 35 years, the photograph had been nothing more than a family memory. Rachel Morgan smiling outside the community center, a young woman with a notebook in her hand, a woman who had no idea that someone was watching her. Now that same photograph had become a potential turning point. The person reflected in the glass window was not clear enough for identification. The face was hidden. The body was partially covered by the angle of the reflection, but one detail stood out. The ring, a silver ring, dark stone in the center, a design rare enough to be remembered, and Daniel Cross had worn one exactly like it. Investigators immediately searched every available photograph of Daniel from 1990. School records, employment files, old driver's license images, social gatherings. The ring appeared again and again. Same shape, same design, same unusual black stone. But Detective Vargas refused to jump to conclusions. A ring was not proof. A DNA match was not the entire story. A suspicious comment about a notebook was not a confession. The truth had to be built carefully, because after 35 years, the last thing investigators wanted was another mistake. They returned to the beginning. Rachel Morgan's final day. Every hour, every minute, every known movement. The timeline remained incomplete. At 8:45 p.m., Rachel left her apartment. At 9:14 p.m., a neighbor saw her near the dark sedan. At 9:32 p.m., a gas station employee saw her speaking with an unknown man. At 10:05 p.m., her phone signal disappeared. At 6:20 a.m. the next morning, her car was found near the desert road. Everything between those moments remained unknown. Until now, the new investigation focused on Daniel Cross, not as a suspect, as a missing piece. Detectives discovered that Daniel lived less than 3 miles from Rachel's apartment in 1990. He worked 10 minutes away. He had access to her vehicle. He had opportunities to encounter her. But investigators needed motive. Why Rachel? The answer came from an unexpected witness, a woman named Lisa Bennett. In 1990, Lisa worked with Rachel at the youth center. She was one of the last people known to speak with her. For decades, Lisa believed she had told investigators everything. But when Detective Vargas showed her the photograph of Daniel Cross, her reaction changed immediately. "I know him." The room became quiet. "You know Daniel Cross?" Lisa nodded slowly. He came to the center. That information had never appeared in the original file, because nobody knew. Lisa explained that Daniel volunteered at the community center for several months before Rachel disappeared. He repaired equipment, fixed broken doors, helped maintain vehicles. At first, everyone liked him. He was helpful, quiet, reliable. Rachel trusted him. But Lisa remembered something strange. He always knew where Rachel was. Detective Vargas leaned forward. "What do you mean?" He would ask about her schedule. "Why?" Lisa hesitated. He said he was just making sure he didn't interrupt her. But over time, it became uncomfortable. Daniel knew when Rachel arrived, when she left, which days she worked late. Lisa remembered warning Rachel, but Rachel dismissed it. She believed Daniel was harmless. Then Lisa revealed something investigators never heard. The week before Rachel vanished, Rachel confronted Daniel about the notebook, the missing notebook. Detective Vargas immediately focused. "What about the notebook?" Lisa explained that Rachel had been writing something. Research, notes, names. She never told Lisa everything, but she said she had discovered something disturbing, something connected to people around her. Rachel told her, "If anything happens to me, look inside the notebook." The sentence changed the entire investigation, because it meant Rachel expected something could happen. She was not randomly taken. She was aware of danger, and she left a clue. But that clue was missing. The notebook had vanished. Lisa continued. The last time she saw Rachel, Rachel was nervous. She kept checking outside the community center. She told Lisa someone had been following her. When Lisa asked who, Rachel refused to answer. She only said, "I trusted the wrong person." Those words became the center of the investigation. Who was the wrong person? Daniel Cross? Someone else? The detectives searched through Rachel's belongings again, this time with a different perspective. They were not looking for evidence of a crime. They were looking for evidence Rachel intentionally left behind. Inside an old storage box belonging to her family, they found something unexpected, a receipt dated August 12, 1990, 5 days before she disappeared. The receipt was from a photo development store. Rachel had developed a roll of film. Investigators checked the original case file. The photographs were never collected. They were never mentioned. They were never reviewed. A forgotten piece of evidence. A missing opportunity. Detectives tracked down the photo store records. The business was closed decades ago, but archived customer orders remained. The negatives had been stored, forgotten, waiting. When investigators recovered them and developed the images, the first photographs showed ordinary moments. Friends, the community center, Rachel's daily life. Then the final images appeared. An investigation changed forever. The photographs showed Rachel meeting someone in secret, a person standing beside her, a person she appeared to trust. Not Daniel Cross. Someone else. Someone investigators had never considered. The final photograph showed Rachel handing over her notebook. The person accepted it, and written on the back of the photograph were Rachel's final handwritten words. "This is the person who knows why." Detective Vargas stared at the image, because the person in the photograph was not a stranger. It was someone connected to Rachel's own family, someone who had spent 35 years claiming to search for answers, someone whose name had been repeated throughout the investigation. And when investigators confirmed the identity of that person, the entire community was left stunned. The identity revealed in the photograph changed the direction of the investigation completely. For 35 years, investigators believed Rachel Morgan's disappearance began with a stranger near a desert road, a stranger connected to a dark sedan, a stranger who vanished into the Arizona heat. But the photograph showed something far more disturbing. Rachel did not disappear because someone found her. She disappeared because someone close to her already knew where she would be. The person standing beside her in the final photograph was Mark Morgan, her older brother, the man who spent decades publicly demanding answers, the man who appeared in newspapers beside Rachel's parents, the man who repeatedly told reporters, "Someone knows what happened to my sister." Now investigators were looking at him differently, not as a grieving family member, but as someone who had been connected to the final moments before Rachel disappeared. Detective Elena Vargas knew the hardest part of any investigation was separating suspicion from reality. Families often became targets in missing person cases, sometimes unfairly, sometimes because investigators had nowhere else to look. She refused to accuse Mark without evidence, but she could not ignore what the photograph showed. Rachel handed him the notebook, not Daniel Cross, not an unknown person, her own brother, the same notebook that disappeared the night she vanished, the same notebook Daniel Cross somehow knew existed, the same notebook Rachel believed contained the truth. The investigation team immediately reviewed everything about Mark Morgan, his original interview, his statements, his public appearances, every detail, and slowly, the inconsistencies appeared. In 1990, Mark told investigators he had not seen Rachel for almost 2 weeks before her disappearance, but the photograph proved otherwise. He met her 5 days before she vanished. When questioned again, Mark changed his story. He admitted they met, but he claimed it was a normal family conversation. She wanted advice. About what? Personal problems. Detective Vargas placed a photograph on the table. "What was she giving you?" Mark looked at the image. His expression changed, only for a second, but investigators noticed. "I don't remember." A dangerous answer, because people forget many things. but they rarely forget receiving something from a missing person days before they disappear. The interview continued. Mark admitted Rachel had been investigating something. He admitted she was worried. He admitted she believed someone was watching her, but he insisted he had no idea what was inside the notebook. That answer created another problem, because Daniel Cross knew about the notebook. Rachel's mother knew about the notebook. Lisa Bennett knew about the notebook. And now Mark admitted Rachel was investigating. Too many people knew. Too many people were connected. The cold case was opening wider, not narrowing. Investigators searched Mark's old records. In 1990, he worked as a financial consultant. One of his clients? North Valley Development, a company connected to several land purchases in the same region where Rachel's car was found. The connection was small, almost invisible, but after 35 years of searching, small connections mattered. Detectives examined North Valley Development. They discovered it had purchased large sections of desert land during the late 1980s, land considered worthless at the time. But years later, those areas became extremely valuable. Mining, construction, energy projects. Rachel had been researching those land deals before she disappeared. The notebook suddenly became more important. It may not have contained personal notes. It may have contained financial evidence, records, names, connections, information someone wanted destroyed. The investigators returned to Daniel Cross because his involvement now looked different. Maybe he was not the person who made Rachel disappear. Maybe he was protecting something or someone. When confronted with a new evidence, Daniel finally admitted something. He knew Mark Morgan. The room went silent. How? Daniel looked exhausted. Mark hired me. For what? Daniel hesitated. To fix things. Detective Vargas asked, What things? Daniel stared at the table. The car. That sentence changed everything. Daniel admitted he worked on Rachel's vehicle before she disappeared, but he claimed Mark contacted him afterward. He asked Daniel to inspect the car after it was found. Not officially, privately. Daniel said Mark wanted to know what police had discovered. What did you tell him? Nothing. Why? Because I knew something was wrong. Daniel explained that after seeing Rachel's abandoned car, he realized something. The vehicle had not been abandoned naturally. Someone had moved things around. Someone had staged the scene. He told Mark, and then Mark became angry. Not surprised. Angry. That detail stayed with investigators, because a person hearing that a loved one might be in danger should want answers. Mark wanted control. The investigation returned to Rachel's final photograph. Experts enhanced the image. Behind Rachel and Mark was a vehicle, a truck, partially hidden. At first, nobody noticed, but after enhancement, the license plate became readable. The truck belonged to Mark Morgan. He had lied. He was not just meeting Rachel. He drove her there. The question became, why? Investigators searched old phone records. Most were lost, but one record survived. A long-distance call made from Mark's home the night Rachel disappeared. The number belonged to a private office, a company connected to North Valley Development. The call lasted 23 minutes. 23 minutes after Rachel vanished from public view. The evidence was building, but the biggest discovery came from Mark's own home. A search warrant was executed. Investigators expected documents, maybe old records. Instead, they found something hidden behind a wall panel in the garage. A small metal container. Inside were photographs, letters, and a notebook, not Rachel's original notebook. A copy. Every page had been photographed. Every secret Rachel wrote down had been preserved. Mark did not destroy the evidence. He kept it for 35 years. The final page contained Rachel's handwriting, a sentence investigators had never seen, a sentence that revealed she knew exactly who was involved. The person I fear most is not the person following me. Below it, another line. It is the person who says they're protecting me. Detective Vargas looked at the evidence, because the case had reached a terrifying turning point. Rachel had not been afraid of a stranger. She had been afraid of someone who claimed to love her, someone who claimed to help her, someone who spent decades pretending to search for the truth. And now investigators had to answer the question that had remained hidden since 1990. What happened between Rachel Morgan and her brother on that final night? Because the answer was buried inside the original notebook. The notebook Mark Morgan had kept hidden. The notebook that was about to reveal the final hours of Rachel's life. The notebook was the evidence everyone had been searching for. The missing piece. The silent witness that had disappeared with Rachel Morgan 35 years earlier. But now it was sitting inside an evidence bag. Protected. Cataloged. Waiting to finally tell its story. Detective Elena Vargas stared at the pages under bright forensic lights. The handwriting was unmistakable. Rachel's handwriting. The same handwriting found in her school notes, her volunteer records, her personal letters. Every word belonged to her. And every word carried the fear of someone who knew time was running out. The first pages contained ordinary information. Names, dates, observations, notes about local land deals, company records, property transfers. At first glance, it looked like a research project. But the deeper investigators went, the darker the picture became. Rachel had been tracking a network, a group of people connected through land purchases across Arizona, companies buying remote desert properties, small families pressured into selling, documents changed, records disappearing, deals hidden behind legal paperwork. Rachel had discovered that many of these properties shared one unusual detail. They were located near areas containing valuable underground resources, mineral deposits, water rights, potential development zones. The land was not worthless. It was worth millions, and someone had been buying it before anyone realized its true value. But Rachel's notes revealed something more disturbing. She believed the corruption went beyond business. She believed people were being intimidated, threatened, forced into silence. The notebook contained names, dates, locations, and one name appeared repeatedly, Mark Morgan, her brother. At first, investigators thought the notes proved Mark was involved, but then they noticed something strange. Rachel did not write about Mark the way she wrote about the others. She did not describe him as an enemy. She described him as someone who was conflicted, someone trapped. One sentence appeared several times. Mark knows, but he is afraid. Detective Vargas stopped when she read those words, because they changed the meaning of everything. Maybe Mark was not the person Rachel feared most. Maybe he was someone caught between loyalty and guilt, someone who knew the truth but could not escape the people controlling it. The next pages contained a timeline. Rachel had documented events leading up to her disappearance. August 1st, 1990, a meeting with a company employee. August 5th, a warning from someone unknown. August 10th, a conversation with Daniel Cross. August 12th, the photograph development. August 15th, the meeting with Mark. August 17th, the final day. Then one sentence written in large letters. If I disappear, start with the people closest to me. The investigators became silent because Rachel knew. She knew the danger was coming from inside her own circle. The notebook continued. Rachel described a meeting she arranged the night she vanished, a meeting designed to expose everything. She planned to give copies of her research to someone she trusted, someone who could bring it to authorities. But that person was never named. Only a symbol appeared beside the entry, a small drawing, a black triangle. Investigators did not recognize it, not at first. Then forensic analysts compared it with other documents. They found the same symbol on one file, a North Valley Development document from 1989, a symbol used internally, a mark indicating restricted information. Rachel had discovered something hidden inside company records, something she was never supposed to see. The investigation expanded. Detectives searched old corporate records. They found a connection between North Valley Development and several people involved in Rachel's life, including Daniel Cross, including Mark Morgan. But the biggest connection belonged to someone else, someone whose name had never appeared in the case, a man named Victor Hale. In 1990, Victor Hale was the director of North Valley Development. He controlled land acquisitions. He approved contracts. He managed the company operations. And according to Rachel's notebook, he was the person at the center of everything. The problem? Victor Hale died in 1998, before investigators ever connected him to Rachel's disappearance. For decades, he was considered irrelevant. Now he became the missing link. Detectives searched his old property records, his personal files, his financial history, and they found something hidden. A storage unit rented under a false name. The unit had been abandoned after his death. Inside were hundreds of documents, most related to business. But one folder immediately caught investigators' attention. The label, Morgan. Inside were photographs, not of Rachel, of Mark, Daniel Cross, and several other people, all taken before Rachel disappeared. Someone had been watching them, tracking them, the same way Rachel believed someone was watching her. The final photograph inside the folder showed Victor Hale meeting with Mark Morgan. The date? August 17, 1990, the night Rachel disappeared. Investigators now had a completely different picture. Rachel was not randomly targeted. She was part of a larger conflict, a conflict involving money, power, family, and secrets. But one question remained. If Victor Hale was involved, why did DNA evidence point to Daniel Cross? The answer came from a second forensic test. Investigators returned to the original DNA sample. They examined the evidence again with advanced technology. The result shocked everyone. The DNA belonged to Daniel Cross, but it was not the DNA of someone who had just touched the vehicle. It was from a much older biological trace, a trace left during a previous interaction, meaning Daniel had been inside Rachel's vehicle before, long before the night she disappeared. That detail changed the case, because Daniel had been telling the truth about one thing. He had worked on Rachel's car, but he had lied about something else. He knew her better than he admitted. Detectives brought Daniel back for another interview. This time, they placed a notebook on the table. Daniel stared at it. His expression collapsed. "You found it." Detective Vargas watched carefully. "Where was it?" Daniel did not answer. "Daniel, you knew about the notebook before anyone told you." Silence. Then Daniel whispered, "Rachel gave it to me." The room froze. "What?" "She trusted me with it." "Then why did you hide that?" Daniel looked down. "Because I failed her." For 35 years, Daniel Cross carried a secret that connected him to Rachel's final plan, a secret that explained the DNA, a secret that revealed Rachel may have been alive after the desert road. Detective Vargas asked a question that changed the entire investigation. "Where did you take Rachel that night?" Daniel closed his eyes, and after 35 years, he finally told them what happened after Rachel disappeared from the world. For 35 years, Daniel Cross carried the weight of one night, a night he never described, a night he never reported, a night that left Rachel Morgan's family searching for answers that never came. But now, sitting across from Detective Elena Vargas, the secret he protected for decades was finally breaking apart. The room was silent. Only the sound of the recording equipment filled the space. Daniel looked older than the man investigators remembered from the records. His hands shook. His voice was quieter. Not the voice of someone defending himself. The voice of someone who had been waiting for the moment when the truth became impossible to hide. Detective Vargas placed a notebook between them. "Rachel gave this to you?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." "When?" "The night she disappeared." The answer changed everything, because until that moment, investigators believed the notebook vanished during the crime. But Daniel was saying something different. Rachel had chosen where it went. She had trusted him, and that meant Daniel Cross was not simply connected to the disappearance. He was part of Rachel's final decision. "Tell me what happened." Daniel stared at the notebook. Then he began. In August 1990, Daniel worked at the automotive shop where Rachel brought her car. He admitted he noticed her immediately, not because of attraction, because of the notebook. He saw her writing in it while waiting for her vehicle. At first, he thought it was personal, A journal, a diary, something ordinary. But weeks later, he saw the names inside. Company names, property records, people he recognized. Daniel knew those names. He knew Victor Hale. He knew Mark Morgan. He knew there was something dangerous happening, but he did not understand how deep it went. Rachel did. She had been investigating quietly. She asked questions. She followed records. She connected information nobody else had noticed. Daniel admitted that Rachel confronted him after discovering his connection to North Valley. She asked if he knew Victor Hale. He lied. He told her no. But Rachel knew. She had already found documents proving otherwise. That was when Daniel realized something. Rachel was not looking for a story. She was looking for justice. And she was getting too close. Daniel explained that on the night Rachel disappeared, she contacted him. She told him she needed help. Not from police. Not from her family. From someone who understood how the system worked. She asked him to meet her outside Mesa, near an old desert access road. When Daniel arrived, Rachel was already there, but she was not alone. Her brother Mark was with her, and the argument had already started. Daniel said Rachel was angry, not afraid, angry. She accused Mark of hiding information, of protecting people who did not deserve protection. Mark told her she did not understand the danger. Rachel responded, "No, Mark, you don't understand. You are the danger." Those words stayed with Daniel for 35 years, because he believed that was the moment everything changed. Then another vehicle arrived, a black SUV. Victor Hale stepped out, the man Rachel had been investigating, the man whose name appeared throughout her notebook. Daniel said he had never seen Rachel look at someone with that much disappointment. Not fear, disappointment, because she expected betrayal from strangers, not from people she knew. Victor Hale told Rachel that she needed to stop, that she had gone too far. Rachel refused. She said she had copies. She said people would know. She said the truth was already spreading. That was when Victor became nervous, because he realized Rachel had planned ahead. Daniel explained that Mark tried to calm everyone down. He was not threatening Rachel. He was trying to convince her to leave. But Victor Hale did not want her leaving. He wanted the notebook. He wanted every copy. He wanted control. Daniel admitted he should have acted sooner. He should have called police. He should have helped Rachel leave. But he was afraid, because Victor Hale was not just a businessman. He had connections, influence, power, and Daniel believed nobody would believe him. Then Rachel did something unexpected. She handed him the notebook. Not Mark, not Victor, Daniel. She whispered, "If they take this, everything disappears." Daniel asked, "Why me?" Rachel answered, "Because you are the only person who still feels guilty." That sentence destroyed him, because it was true. Daniel knew what was happening. He knew something was wrong, and he still stood there. Rachel told him to leave. She told him to hide the notebook. She told him if she did not come back, he had to make sure the truth survived. Then Daniel made the decision that haunted him. He drove away, and he abandoned her. Hours later, Rachel Morgan was gone. Daniel never told anyone because he believed he had failed her. He believed coming forward would only expose his own cowardice. Detective Vargas listened carefully. "But you kept the notebook." Daniel nodded. "I couldn't destroy the only thing she left behind." "Where was it?" Daniel looked at the evidence bag. "Hidden." "Where?" Daniel hesitated, then answered, "Inside something nobody would ever search." The detectives followed Daniel's instructions. They returned to the old automotive shop. The building had changed owners several times, but the original structure remained. Behind a section of old wall near the storage area, investigators found a hidden compartment. Inside was a second collection of evidence, photographs, documents, and a small digital recorder from 1990. The recorder was damaged, but forensic experts recovered the audio. The first seconds were unclear. Then Rachel's voice appeared. Her final recorded message, "If you're hearing this." A pause. Then something went wrong. Detectives stopped the audio. Nobody moved, because after 35 years, Rachel Morgan was speaking again. The recording continued. I don't know who I can trust anymore. Static. I thought I understood how far they would go. A breath. I was wrong. Then came the sentence that changed the case forever. The person helping them is someone I love. Detective Vargas looked at the evidence board, because suddenly the investigation had another impossible question. Rachel was not only investigating strangers, she was investigating someone close, someone she loved, someone whose identity she had discovered before she disappeared. The recording continued, but before Rachel revealed the name, the audio became distorted. The final words were almost impossible to hear. Almost. Experts cleaned the recording for weeks, and when they finally recovered the missing sentence, the name Rachel whispered shocked everyone involved, because it was not Victor Hale. It was not Daniel Cross. It was not Mark Morgan. It was someone nobody had ever suspected. Someone who had spent 35 years standing beside Rachel's family. Someone who had been searching for the truth. While hiding it, the name on the recording would reopen the entire case. The recovered audio changed the entire investigation. For 35 years, Rachel Morgan's disappearance had been built around one question: who took her? But the recording revealed a much more disturbing possibility. Rachel knew. She knew someone close to her was involved. She knew the danger was not coming from the desert, not from a stranger, not from a random criminal. It was coming from someone inside her own circle, someone whose name she whispered before the recording failed. Forensic experts spent weeks restoring the damaged audio. The old device had suffered decades of heat exposure. The magnetic tape was fragile. Every second was a battle. But slowly, the missing words became clearer. Rachel's voice, quiet, tired, but certain, the person helping them. A pause. It is my father. The room went silent. Detective Elena Vargas replayed the sentence several times. She wanted to be sure. She needed to be sure, because the name Rachel spoke was impossible. Thomas Morgan, Rachel's father, the man who spent 35 years demanding answers, the man who appeared at every anniversary, the man who told reporters, "My daughter deserves justice." Now investigators had to consider a devastating possibility. What if Thomas Morgan had not been searching for the truth? What if he had been protecting it? The investigation immediately shifted. Rachel's family history was reopened. Every statement, every interview, every public appearance. Thomas Morgan had always been described as heartbroken, but detectives began noticing details that had been overlooked. Small details, a sentence here, a reaction there, moments that seemed meaningless in 1990, but look different now. When Rachel first disappeared, Thomas told investigators she had no enemies, no conflicts, no reason to vanish. But the notebook proved that was not true. Rachel was investigating powerful people. She knew she was in danger, and she believed someone close to her was helping them, someone she loved, someone with access to her life. Her father, Detective Vargas, requested all financial records connected to Thomas Morgan. At first, nothing appeared unusual. Thomas worked as a construction consultant. He owned a small business. He lived a modest life. But hidden inside decades of records was one transaction. A payment, a large payment, made in September 1990, only weeks after Rachel disappeared. The source? North Valley Development, the company connected to Victor Hale, the company Rachel was investigating. Thomas had received money from the same organization his daughter believed was corrupt. The amount was not enough to make him wealthy, but enough to raise questions. The family was notified. Rachel's mother refused to believe it. Thomas loved her. Detective Vargas understood, because the hardest truths are often the ones people cannot accept. Sometimes the person who causes the most pain is not a stranger. Sometimes it is someone you never imagined could hurt you. But investigators needed more than money. They needed proof, and they found it in an old storage unit registered under Thomas Morgan's name. Inside were boxes of documents, tax records, receipts, personal items, until investigators found a sealed envelope. The envelope was dated August 18th, 1990, the day after Rachel disappeared. Inside was a handwritten note, Thomas's handwriting, only a few lines. She knows too much. I tried to stop this. I failed. Investigators stared at the paper because the note raised a terrifying question. Was Thomas admitting guilt, or was he admitting he tried to protect Rachel? The answer came from another document inside the same envelope, a letter Rachel wrote to her father. The letter had never been sent. The opening line was shocking. "Dad, I know what you did." The investigators continued reading. Rachel wrote that she discovered her father had been working with North Valley Development for years. She knew he helped identify valuable properties. She knew he had access to information. But she also believed he was not the person who started the corruption. He was someone who got trapped inside it. Rachel wrote, "You were scared before I was." That sentence changed the interpretation. Maybe Thomas was involved, but maybe he was also being controlled. The letter continued. Rachel explained that she confronted her father days before disappearing. She asked him why he never warned families, why he never exposed what he knew. Thomas's answer was recorded in Rachel's notes. Because people disappear when they try. That sentence matched something investigators had heard before, from Daniel Cross, from Lisa Bennett, from others connected to the case. Everyone was afraid. Everyone knew something, but nobody acted except Rachel, and that was why she became the target. The investigation returned to Victor Hale. Although he had died decades earlier, investigators examined his old communications. They discovered something unexpected. Victor Hale had been communicating with Thomas Morgan for months before Rachel disappeared. Not professionally. Personally, the two men had known each other for years. Their relationship went far beyond business. They had attended the same meetings, shared the same contacts, protected the same secrets. But the final discovery came from a photograph found inside Thomas's storage unit, taken 3 days before Rachel vanished. The image showed Thomas meeting Victor Hale, but they were not alone. Standing beside them was Daniel Cross, and beside Daniel, a fourth person, someone investigators recognized immediately, because this person had spent 35 years claiming to be Rachel's biggest supporter, the person who organized searches, the person who gave interviews, the person who told the community, "We will never stop looking." Rachel's mother, Sarah Morgan. Detective Vargas stared at the photograph, because now the entire Morgan family was connected. Father, mother, brother, and the man whose DNA was found in Rachel's car. The investigation had started as a search for one missing woman. Now it had become a story about an entire family hiding something. But there was one problem. Sarah Morgan had one secret that nobody knew, a secret she had protected for 35 years. And when investigators finally questioned her about the photograph, she did not deny it. She simply said, "I was there." The room went silent. "Where?" Sarah looked directly at Detective Vargas. "The night Rachel disappeared." For the first time in the entire investigation, someone finally admitted they knew what happened. Not a rumor, not a theory, not a forgotten memory. A confession. But Sarah's next words revealed something nobody expected. She said Rachel Morgan did not disappear that night. She escaped. The statement from Sarah Morgan changed the case forever. Rachel did not disappear that night. Detective Elena Vargas sat across from the woman who had spent 35 years mourning her daughter in public, a mother who attended memorial events, a mother who kept Rachel's room untouched, a mother who told everyone she wanted only one thing, the truth. But now she was saying the truth had been hidden from everyone, including the police, including the community, including the people who spent decades searching. Sarah Morgan looked exhausted, not from the interview, from carrying the secret. "I thought I was protecting her." Those words were the first thing she said after admitting she knew more. Detective Vargas looked at the old woman. Protecting her from what? Sarah looked toward the window. From the people who wanted her silent. The investigation team recorded every word. Every pause, every hesitation. Because after 35 years, the person who knew the most was finally speaking. Sarah explained that the night Rachel disappeared was not the night everything ended. It was a night everything changed. She said Rachel contacted her shortly after midnight. Not by phone, not from home, from a payphone. A location Sarah had never revealed. Rachel was alive. She was frightened, but she was calm. Sarah remembered her daughter's voice. "Mom, you cannot tell anyone I called." At first, Sarah thought Rachel had been kidnapped. She thought someone forced her to speak. But then Rachel said something unexpected. "No one is holding me." That sentence confused her, because if Rachel was free, why was she hiding? Why did she abandon her car? Why did she allow everyone to believe she was missing? The answer was simple. Because someone was watching. Rachel told her mother that she discovered the investigation itself had been compromised. She believed the wrong people had access to police information. Every move she made was being tracked. Every person she contacted became vulnerable. So she made a decision. She would disappear before someone could make her disappear. Detective Vargas asked the question that mattered. Where did she go? Sarah looked down. "I don't know." The detective remained silent. Sarah continued. "She didn't tell me." Rachel only gave her one instruction. Wait. Wait until the truth was safe. Wait until the people involved could no longer control the story. But Sarah admitted she broke one promise. She searched for Rachel. She tried to find her. And that was when she discovered something terrifying. Someone else was looking too. Not for Rachel. For anyone who knew Rachel survived. Sarah described receiving anonymous letters. No return address. No signature. Only warnings. The first letter said, "Forget the phone call." The second said, "Your daughter made her choice." The third was different. Shorter. More threatening. "You are running out of time." Sarah kept every letter, but she never showed police. The investigation immediately requested the letters. Forensic analysts examined them, and the results created another shock. The paper, the ink, the fingerprints. One partial print was recovered, and it matched someone already connected to the case. Mark Morgan, Rachel's brother. The family's secrets were becoming impossible to ignore. Detectives brought Mark in again. This time, the approach changed. They did not accuse him. They asked one question. "Did you know Rachel was alive?" Mark sat silently for almost a minute. Then he answered, "Yes." The confession was finally coming. Mark admitted he knew Rachel survived. He admitted he met her after she left the desert road. He admitted he helped her disappear. But he insisted he was not responsible for what happened. "I was trying to save her." Detective Vargas asked, "From who?" Mark looked down. "My father." The room went quiet, because the case had now turned completely upside down. For decades, Thomas Morgan was seen as a grieving father. Now his own son was accusing him. Mark explained that Thomas became involved with North Valley Development years earlier. At first, he believed it was legitimate business. But when he realized what was happening, it was too late. People were already being threatened. Records were already being changed. And Victor Hale had too much power. Mark said Rachel discovered everything by accident. She found documents hidden in Thomas's office. She confronted him. And Thomas did something unexpected. He admitted everything. But he begged her to stop, because he knew what would happen. Rachel refused. She believed exposing the truth was worth the risk. Mark admitted that he helped Rachel create a plan to disappear, a plan to make everyone believe she was gone. But the plan had one condition. Nobody could know, not even Sarah, not even Daniel, not even the police, because anyone who knew became a target. Detective Vargas asked, "Then why did Daniel have a notebook?" Mark answered, "Because Rachel trusted him." The investigators realized something. The people around Rachel were not all enemies. Some were trying to protect her. But every person protecting a secret was also helping keep the truth hidden. And that was why the case remained unsolved. Too many people knew pieces. Nobody knew everything. Mark continued. After Rachel disappeared, She contacted him only once, 5 years later. No return address. Inside was a photograph. Rachel was alive, older, different appearance, standing somewhere unfamiliar. On the back were 5 words, "I am still watching." Mark kept the photograph hidden. He never told anyone, not because he wanted to protect himself, because Rachel asked him not to. Detective Vargas asked the obvious question, "Where is she now?" Mark shook his head. "I don't know." "Did you ever meet her again?" "No." "Then why did you keep searching?" Mark looked at the table. "Because I knew she was waiting." "For what?" Mark looked up. "For someone to finish what she started." That sentence changed the investigation once again. Because Rachel Morgan was not simply hiding. She was still involved, still watching, still waiting. The investigators searched the old case files again. This time, they found something buried in the original evidence. A photograph taken from Rachel's apartment after she disappeared. A photograph nobody paid attention to. On her desk was a calendar. One date circled. A date 3 years after her disappearance. And beside it, a symbol. The same black triangle. The same symbol found in North Valley development files. The same symbol Rachel used in her notebook. The symbol was not a warning. It was a meeting point. A place where Rachel planned to return. A place where she intended to reveal everything. Investigators located the address connected to the symbol. An abandoned research facility outside Tucson. Closed since 1993. Unused. Forgotten. But when they entered the building, they found evidence that someone had been there recently. Fresh footprints. New batteries in an old recorder. And on a dusty table, a message written by hand. 4 words. The same handwriting investigators had not seen in 35 years. Rachel Morgan was alive, and she had been waiting for them. The message on the dusty table changed the entire meaning of the investigation. 4 words, written in a familiar handwriting. A handwriting investigators had not seen since 1990. "I knew you would come." Rachel Morgan. Alive. Or at least, someone wanted them to believe she was. Detective Elena Vargas stood inside the abandoned research facility outside Tucson, staring at the message. The building had been empty for more than 30 years. The windows were covered in dust. The walls were damaged. The air smelled like old paper and desert heat. But someone had been there. Recently, the evidence was impossible to ignore. A fresh footprint near the entrance. A chair moved away from a table. A recorder placed carefully in the center of the room. Someone wanted this place found. Someone wanted the investigation to continue. The question was it Rachel, or was someone using her name? The forensic team examined everything. The recorder, the handwriting, the fingerprints, the room itself. Then they discovered something hidden beneath the floor. A metal container. Small, rust-covered, locked. Inside were documents. Hundreds of pages. Records dating back to the late 1980s. North Valley development files. Private communications. Financial transactions. Names. Payments. And one folder marked Project Desert Mirror. The name meant nothing at first. But when investigators opened the folder, they understood. This was what Rachel had been chasing all along. Project Desert Mirror was a private operation created by North Valley Development. Officially, it was a land research program. Unofficially, it was a system designed to control information. The documents revealed that North Valley had tracked opponents, monitored residents, collected personal information, and identified anyone who threatened their plans. Rachel Morgan was not the only person watched. She was just a person who refused to stop. The folder contained surveillance reports, including one about Rachel. The first report was dated 6 months before her disappearance. Subject, Rachel Morgan. The description was chilling. Highly intelligent. Increasing curiosity. Potential exposure risk. Investigators continued reading. The documents showed Victor Hale ordered monitoring of Rachel after she began asking questions about land purchases. But then they found something unexpected. A second report. Written weeks later. The author was different. The tone was different. This report described Rachel as a possible ally. The person who wrote it believed Rachel could be useful, could help expose the corruption. And the signature at the bottom shocked investigators. Thomas Morgan, Rachel's father, the man who had been accused of hiding the truth, the man who had also been secretly collecting evidence against North Valley. The picture became more complicated. Thomas was not simply a victim, not simply a criminal. He was a man who had lived between two worlds, a man who helped create something he later tried to destroy. The documents showed Thomas secretly copied information from North Valley. He gathered evidence. He prepared to expose them. But he waited too long. Rachel moved faster. She discovered the truth before he was ready. And when she disappeared, Thomas believed the only way to protect her was to let the world think she was gone. Detective Vargas returned to the recorder found in the room. The device contained one audio file. The timestamp was recent, recorded only 3 days earlier. The voice was older, but unmistakable. Rachel Morgan, for the first time in 35 years. Investigators heard her speak. I know everyone wants an answer. A pause. But answers are dangerous when the people who cause a problem are still alive. The room became silent. Rachel continued. I disappeared because I had no other choice. I thought distance would protect the people I loved. But I was wrong. Her voice became quieter. Because secrets don't disappear. They grow. The recording explained that Rachel spent decades collecting evidence. Not hiding. Preparing. She watched as North Valley collapsed. She watched as people involved slowly disappeared. But one person remained. One person who still controlled information. One person who still had influence. Rachel never said the name. Instead, she left a clue. A date and a location. The same date marked on her old calendar. The date she planned to return. Detectives checked the calendar. The date was only weeks away. The investigation suddenly became a race. Because if Rachel was planning to reveal everything, someone else might be trying to stop her. The team immediately reviewed all surviving suspects. Victor Hale was dead. Thomas Morgan was dead. Daniel Cross was elderly and cooperating. Mark Morgan had disappeared from public life. But one name remained, a person connected to North Valley from the beginning, someone who had never been investigated, someone who appeared only in the background, a person who handled the company's legal operations, a person who controlled documents, a person who knew exactly how to erase evidence. His name was Richard Vale. In 1990, Richard Vale was the attorney representing North Valley Development. He prepared contracts, managed lawsuits, protected the company's interests, and after Rachel disappeared, he became the person who helped close every investigation connected to North Valley. He was the man who made problems disappear. Detectives located him living in California, now 79 years old, a retired attorney, a respected community member, a person nobody suspected. When investigators arrived at his home, he did not seem surprised. He looked at them and said, "You finally found her." Detective Vargas froze. "What did you say?" Richard Vale smiled slightly. "You found Rachel." The detectives exchanged looks, because nobody had told him. The police had not announced it. Yet Richard Vale already knew. The interview lasted less than 10 minutes before he revealed something impossible. He admitted Rachel had contacted him. Recently. Not once. Several times. He claimed she wanted him to confess. She wanted him to tell the truth about North Valley. But he refused. "Why?" Detective Vargas asked. Richard looked toward the window. "Because she still doesn't understand." "Understand what?" "That some secrets are buried for a reason." The detective leaned forward. "Are you threatening her?" Richard smiled. "No." A pause. "I'm warning you." The interview ended immediately, but before Richard left the room, he said one final thing, a sentence that changed the entire case. Rachel Morgan is not the only person who survived that night. Investigators stopped. "What does that mean?" Richard looked directly at them. "It means someone else knows where she has been." Who? Richard answered with a name that nobody expected, a name that connected the past and present, a name that proved Rachel's disappearance was never only about hiding her, it was about hiding someone else, someone who had been missing since 1990, someone investigators believed was dead, but according to Richard Vale, was alive and had been waiting in the shadows for 35 years. The name Richard Vale gave investigators changed everything. For 35 years, one disappearance had been at the center of the case, Rachel Morgan. But now another name had appeared, another person, another secret buried beneath decades of silence. Someone investigators believed was dead, someone whose disappearance had been dismissed as unrelated. Michael Crane, the surveyor, the man whose records first connected Rachel to the hidden land deals. For 35 years, everyone believed Michael Crane died in a boating accident. No body was recovered, no confirmed evidence, just an abandoned boat, an empty investigation, another mystery added to the growing list of unanswered questions surrounding North Valley development. But Richard Vale's statement suggested something impossible. Michael Crane survived, and Rachel knew where he was. Detective Elena Vargas immediately reopened the Michael Crane file. The old investigation had only lasted 6 months. At the time, police believed Crane's disappearance was unrelated, a tragique accident, a coincidence. But now investigators saw the pattern. Rachel disappeared. Michael disappeared. Both connected to the same company. Both connected to the same evidence. Both vanished within days of each other. Coincidence was becoming impossible. The original boating accident report was reviewed, and the first problem appeared immediately. The boat was found, but there was no proof Michael Crane had ever been on it. No personal belongings, no fingerprints, no confirmed witness. The entire assumption was built on one thing. The boat belonged to him. Nothing more. Detective Vargas contacted the retired officer who handled the case. His name was Robert Ellis, now 80 years old. When investigators asked about Michael Crane, his answer was unexpected. I always thought someone wanted us to close that file. That sentence opened another door. Ellis explained that during the original investigation, he received pressure from higher officials, not direct orders, not threats, just suggestions. Questions like, are we sure we need to continue? Is this really connected? Maybe this is just a personal matter. The same pattern, the same invisible hand, the same effort to stop people from looking deeper. Investigators searched Michael Crane's remaining records. They found something hidden, a bank account, open under a different name, inactive since 1991. Inside were small deposits made over several months. The money came from different sources, but all traced back to one company, North Valley Development. Michael Crane had not been running away. He had been hiding. The investigation team now believed there were two possibilities. Either Michael was involved in the corruption, or he was another person trying to escape it. The answer came from an old photograph, a photograph found in the abandoned research facility. Rachel, Michael, Daniel, Mark, Thomas, all connected, all working around the same truth. But one person was missing, Victor Hale, the man controlling everything, the man who died before anyone could question him. Investigators began examining Victor Hale's final years. They discovered something disturbing. Before his death in 1998, Victor Hale had become increasingly paranoid. He installed private security systems, changed his phone numbers, destroyed personal records, and wrote one sentence repeatedly in a private journal. They know what I did. The journal contained no explanation, only fear. Then investigators found the final entry, written 3 days before Victor's death. If Rachel returns, everything ends. The case was no longer about a missing woman. It was about a secret that had survived everyone who tried to bury it. The investigation focused on the date Rachel marked on her calendar, the date she planned to return. Detectives tracked the location, a remote property outside Sedona, officially abandoned. No ownership records for decades. But when investigators searched historical documents, they found the connection. The property was once owned by Michael Crane, the missing surveyor, the person everyone believed was dead. The team moved immediately. The building on the property was small, old, almost forgotten, but inside, someone had been living there. Not recently. For years, the walls were covered with maps, newspaper articles, photographs, files. The entire history of the case was there. Rachel Morgan, North Valley Development, Victor Hale, Thomas Morgan, everything. And on one wall, a timeline, 1990 to 2025. Someone had been watching the investigation for 35 years. At the center of the room was a letter addressed to Detective Elena Vargas. She stared at her name. Nobody outside the department knew about this location. Nobody knew they were coming. But someone had prepared for them. She opened the letter. The handwriting was old, different from Rachel's. Michael Crane. The first line read, "If you found this," then Rachel was right. The letter explained everything. Michael Crane did survive. He escaped after discovering North Valley's plans. He was not a victim. He was a witness. And in 1990, he helped Rachel disappear. But there was one detail that shocked investigators. Rachel did not disappear to escape. She disappeared to investigate. Michael explained that Rachel spent decades building a case, collecting evidence, waiting, because exposing North Valley in 1990 would have failed. Too many people were protected. Too many officials were connected. So Rachel waited until the system changed, until the evidence was strong enough, until the people responsible could no longer hide. But Michael included one warning, a warning written in bold. Rachel is in danger again. The reason was simple. The final evidence existed, the complete proof, the documents that could destroy everyone involved. And someone was trying to find it before Rachel could release it. The letter ended with a location, a final meeting point, the place where Rachel planned to reveal everything. Detectives arrived there the next morning. A remote desert overlook, a place with no buildings, no roads, only endless Arizona landscape. They expected to find evidence. Instead, they found a person, standing alone, waiting, older, changed by time, but immediately recognizable. Rachel Morgan, after 35 years, the woman at the center of the longest cold case in Arizona history, was standing in front of them, alive. But before anyone could speak, Rachel looked at Detective Vargas and said, "You don't understand." A pause. The case was never about finding me. She looked toward the desert. It was about finding the person who tried to make sure I never came back. Then she handed investigators one final piece of evidence, a document, a name, and a truth that would shock the entire community. Because the person who ordered Rachel's disappearance was someone nobody had ever investigated. For 35 years, the world believed Rachel Morgan was a missing woman, a name on an old case file, a photograph on a wall, a memory slowly fading with time. But now she was standing in front of Detective Elena Vargas, alive, older, carrying the weight of 3.5 decades of secrets. The desert wind moved across the empty landscape. Nobody spoke, because after years of searching for a victim, investigators were finally looking at the person who had survived. Rachel looked different from the photograph taken in 1990. Time had changed her. Her hair was gray. Her face carried the marks of years spent hiding. But her eyes were the same determination, the same refusal to surrender. Detective Vargas approached slowly. "Rachel Morgan?" Rachel nodded. "Yes." The question everyone wanted answered came immediately. Why? Why disappear? Why let her family suffer? Why allow an entire community to believe she was dead? Rachel looked down. Because if I stayed, people would have died. The answer was not dramatic, not emotional, just certain. She explained that after discovering the North Valley operation, she realized something terrifying. The people involved were not afraid of exposure. They were afraid of losing control. They had money, connections, influence, and they had already proven they were willing to silence people. Michael Crane had survived because he disappeared first. Rachel survived because she followed his example. But there was one person who made everything possible. Her father, Thomas Morgan, the man everyone suspected, the man everyone blamed. Rachel explained that Thomas was guilty, but not in the way people thought. He had helped North Valley. He had provided information. He had benefited from the system. But eventually, he tried to destroy it. And that made him dangerous to the people he once worked with. Thomas knew Rachel had discovered the truth. He knew she was in danger. So he made the hardest decision of his life. He helped his own daughter disappear. But before he could explain everything publicly, he died. The secret remained buried. Until now, Rachel handed Detective Vargas the final document, the one piece of evidence she protected for 35 years, a signed order, a payment authorization, a document showing who truly controlled the operation. The signature at the bottom shocked investigators. Not Victor Hale, not Thomas Morgan, not Richard Vale. The name belonged to someone else. A person who had never appeared in the original investigation. A person who had spent decades living as a respected member of the community. The true architect behind Project Desert Mirror. Edward Whitmore, the founder of North Valley Development. Unlike Victor Hale, Edward Whitmore never appeared in police files. He stayed behind the scenes, controlled the money, built the network, and when problems appeared, he made them disappear. The investigation reopened immediately. Records were examined. Financial connections were traced. Old witnesses were interviewed again. And slowly, the truth became impossible to deny. Edward Whitmore had ordered surveillance on Rachel. He had ordered the destruction of records. He had pressured officials. He had controlled the people around him through fear and money. But there was one problem. Edward Whitmore had died in 2005. The man responsible was gone. No trial, no courtroom, no final confrontation. But the investigation was not over because his network survived. Several people connected to him were still alive, including Richard Vale, including former company officials, including individuals who had spent decades hiding behind respectable careers. The cold case that began with one missing woman became one of the largest investigations Arizona had seen. The community reacted with shock. People who had known Rachel's family for years struggled to understand. The woman they mourned had been alive. The people they trusted had hidden the truth. And the mystery that haunted them for decades had been solved in the most unexpected way. Not through confession, not through a lucky discovery, but through a woman who refused to let the truth disappear. Months later, Rachel Morgan appeared publicly for the first time. The crowd was silent. Many people expected anger. They expected accusations. Instead, Rachel spoke calmly. I know people want to know why I left. A pause. But the question should be why I had to. She explained that disappearance was never freedom. It was another kind of prison. Every birthday, every holiday, every moment away from her family. She carried the consequences of that choice. But she believed the alternative would have been worse. Because if she had stayed, the truth would have died with her. The final investigation report officially changed the status of case. From missing person to resolved. The longest mystery surrounding Rachel Morgan was finally closed. But the story left behind a warning. Because some cold cases are not forgotten, because evidence disappears. They remain unsolved because someone is working to keep the evidence buried. Rachel Morgan's case survived because fragments remained. A notebook, a photograph, a hidden recording, a forgotten document. Small pieces waiting for someone to connect them. And, in the end, the truth was not found in one dramatic moment. It was found in 35 years of silence. 35 years of fear. 35 years of people carrying secrets they thought would never be exposed. Today, the old desert road where Rachel's abandoned vehicle was found remains quiet. Most people driving through never know what happened there. They do not see the investigation. They do not see the years of searching. They do not see the lives changed forever. They only see empty land. But beneath that silence remains a memory of a woman who vanished and returned A woman who became the center of one of Arizona's most shocking cold cases. A woman who proved that secrets can survive for decades, but they cannot survive forever. Because, eventually, someone finds the evidence, someone asks the right questions, and someone tells the truth.